morning. We're gonna make banana muffins today. So this recipe is up on Shutterfly under recipes, and this is something that we've done in the classroom. I'm not gonna add chocolate chips. In our house, I really mash up walnuts, and my family likes them that way. We can add chocolate chips instead of adding nuts. So the first step that I usually do when I bake is I melt my butter so that by the time it gets into the bowl, it's room temperature. So I have my stick of butter, and for this recipe, it's 5, what does it say? It's 1/3 of a cup of shortening margarine or butter, but I prefer butter. So you can, this is part of the math of baking. So we just count, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1/3 of a cup is 5 tablespoons, and then 1/3 of a tablespoon. So you can always demonstrate to your child that here's 1/3 of a cup and here's 1/2. So kind of like the art of cooking is 1/3 is a little less than 1/2. You know, again, everybody has their own way of baking and cooking. I just find that to be like the easiest thing to remember. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little less than 1/2 of this. And then I'm gonna melt this in the microwave. And then the next step now, I've already washed my hands like right before 50 times today already, so, but before you're baking, obviously, you want to be able to be washing your hands. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the flour, the sugar, the baking powder, baking soda, and salt. My baking soda, and my salt, and it's 1 cup of flour. So I'll show you how I do this. So my kids love to level off the flour, and it's always the flat side of the knife. They love to do that. Now, before I do any of the adding of the dry ingredients, I'm going to mash up my bananas in this my blender. Now, a lot of people have different ways of doing this. This is just how I have historically always done it. Some people add wet to dry. I just add everything all at once. Seems to work out fine. If you have your own way of kind of really following the directions, that's totally up to you. I've made these, I don't know, over the course of time with my kids. My oldest is 17, and these little mini muffins, you can only imagine how many times I've made these. Now, it says in the recipe 2 to 3 medium bananas. If you've only got, 1, you could do it. But I imagine you probably have more than that, or none. So just wait until you get some bananas that are mushy. And the mushier the better, because that means that the banana or the sugars are going to be better, but it doesn't necessarily, you just don't want them to be right. You want them to be a little mushy, like where you wouldn't want to eat it. You'd rather like cut it up and throw it in cereal or something. Alright, so I'm just going to let that go. so my bananas are mushed. I'm going to add my butter and I'm going to add my milk. I'm actually adding cashew milk instead of regular milk. So if you have almond milks, you know, anything to give added protein, plus you're not going to be tasting the milk. There's my butter, and then it says 2 tablespoons of milk. 1, 2. Just gonna blend this, and then I'm gonna add my dry ingredients. All right, so now it's time to add the dry ingredients. It's 1 cup of flour first, and then 3 1/4 cups. So that's basically taking a 1/4 cup and doing it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and I know in the recipe it says not to do that. It says to add the remaining flour at the end. You can follow it direct, you know, but often I just find you just throw everything in. It seems to work out fine. All right, so now I have to add my sugar, and that's 2/3. 1, 2, and then I have to add all my ingredients to help our muffins rise, which would be the baking soda. It's very effective in doing that. All right, so for the baking powder, I need 2 teaspoons. So that is, here's the baking powder. Baking powder is 2 teaspoons, and it's always good to teach your kids to slow down and not rush while you bake, because that is how you make errors. And trust me, I have made plenty with baking with my 3 kids over the years. So teaching them to kind of slow down, reread, so and re-look at the what it says on the spoon. And luckily I have them, they're all together, so it kind of helps with that. All right, so baking soda, I need 1/2 teaspoon, so that's this guy. And then for my salt, I just need 1/4, so that's the smallest. So in this exercise, you can also just talk about, these are fractions and how it goes down, like when we put them all together. Largest to smallest is a good conversation to have. All right, so now I'm going to mix this together, and then the last 2 things we have to add are our eggs and then our nuts. So this is going to blend for 2 minutes. So I'll be done. Okay, so now we're ready to add our eggs. So cracking eggs is always an interesting thing to teach little kids. A friend of mine, and she taught my Emma how to do it, and I've always done it on the side. Then you get shell, and obviously your countertop is clean because you're baking. Sometimes it's just easier to hit it on the countertop a couple times and then just pour the egg in. And you don't have to worry about shell getting in. Also too, worst case scenario is you just kind of scoop it up and throw it in. But at least gives them a chance to participate more. And also too, if you don't have a standing mixer, you could just, a lot of muscle, working the muscles if they're stirring. So for this, it's you don't have to incorporate the egg. You could just put both eggs in at the same time. But again, if you have your own system when you're baking, I know that some bakers are very particular, whatever you want to do. But this is a pretty fail-safe recipe, since this is actually what we do in school. So you can only imagine doing it with 17 kids. We have to kind of have fail-safes. Another thing you can do is that you don't have to add the nuts. So this is the time where you would add your chocolate chips or the nuts, and it's a 1/4 cup. But you know, if you want to throw in an extra, no big deal. So here are my nuts. I buy them whole, and then I get a hammer, and I put what I need in a plastic bag, and I put them in between towels, and the kids can like bang at it. So anything to entertain them. All right, so I got my nuts. That gets blended. Now, you'll notice that on the recipe it says banana bread. We make mini muffins. So it's $3.50 for like 8 to 10 minutes. And if you don't have a mini muffin pan, this is the mini muffin pan that I have. If you don't have one, you can do regular muffins, or you can in fact just do the banana bread. My kids like to eat the mini muffins, and plus in school it's easier. That way we have it's easier for snack. Okay, so I'm gonna pour this stuff into the pan, and I'll be done. Okay, welcome back. So here are the muffins. So this recipe will make a loaf, but it will make this many mini muffins. All right, so this is before, and I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Welcome back. So this is them out of the oven, and this is them on the cooling rack. All right, so enjoy. Hope you guys had fun. Okay, so when you are taking these out, it is handy to have a butter knife, and just to kind of get it to kind of loosen up. And then just the dark pan took 12 minutes and the lighter pan took 14. So start off at 8 minutes, see where they are, and if they start to have this kind of look about them, they're probably done. And also too, if they bounce back, and also fail safe is a toothpick. These guys, this pan, they really never get very brown, but they're all done because you just pretty much touch them and they're done. All right. Okay. Enjoy. Have fun baking.